All right, CNT125, Chapter 8. We got done talking about all different types of subnetting, Class C, Class B, Class A. Now we get down to how do we actually implement these. And this, for me, is when actually light bulbs started to kick on for me of like, oh, that's why we're doing all this work. So as we do our labs, we're going to be doing some subnet planning where we do some subnetting problems. Then we are going to eventually do implementing the subnets in our own subnetted network. And again, that's when light bulbs kicked on for me. So hang in there as you're wading through this stuff. Maybe as you get to this point, that's when you start doing it like, oh, I see what's going on. So let's look how, again, if we take a Class C network and we subnet it, what we're going to do with these numbers. So let's do a Class C network. We need 6 subnets. So to do that, we borrow 3 bits. We'll have some extra subnets because we'll get 8. We'll have some extra subnets. That's fine. So here's my default for Class C, 255, 255, 2550. 24 ones, 8 zeros, that's my default. If I borrow 3 bits, I'm left with 5 host bits. 3 bits for subnets, 5 bits for host. So I'm going to get 8 subnets created. And 2 to the 5 will tell me there's 32 addresses per subnet, of which 30 are usable. I will need to update my subnet mask, so there's my 3 bits borrowed. So if I take this octet right here and convert it to decimal, I'll get 224. Again, I'm adding up 128, 64, and 32. There's 3 place values right there. Add them up and I will get 224. I will add 3 bits to my original 24 and I will get a /27 as my CIDR notation. The next thing we do, just like we were subnetting before, I look at that borrowed bit place. That right there is my interesting bit. I borrowed 3 bits. That right there is my interesting bit. 1, 2, 3. There's my 3 bits borrowed. That far right bit is my interesting bit. That is the 32 place. So that being the 32 place, I know my subnets are going to go by a factor of 32. So I then start writing out my subnet 0, 32, 64, 96, etc. I then do my broadcast addresses. If this starts at 32, this has to end at 31. If this starts at 64, this has to end at 63. So then I plug in my broadcast numbers. The numbers in the middle are the usable. 1 more, 1 less. So 1 to 30, 33 to 62, 65 to 94, 97 to 126, and so forth. This is what we've done to this point. This now is the information we need to start applying or using these numbers to apply to my network. And just again, a reminder, we borrowed 3 bits, so we got 8 subnets. Here's the 8 subnets right there. We said 5 bits were left for hosts, 32 addresses per subnet. There they are. I got 32 numbers. 0 to 31 is 32 numbers. And I said there would be 30 usable. There is the 30 usable. 1 to 30 is 30 numbers. 30 usable numbers. Well, now that I have this, I can start applying these subnets to my network and then the usable addresses for the devices on those subnets. So I take a look at my example earlier this semester where they had a router and a router on each floor, if you will. Well, since there's a router on each floor, I'm going to need a subnet on each floor. So subnet 1, they said, is going to be the 0 subnet. 192.168, that's 60 in there. 60.0, 80.0. That'll be the 0 subnet. This next one above will be my 32 subnet, the next one on my chart. And the next one above that would be the 64 subnet. So 0, 32, 64. So there's my first 3 subnets get used. 0, 32, 64. And now I can then, let me go back to my chart here. Here is my 0, 32, 64. I can now start using the usable numbers for each of those subnets for the devices on that subnet or that floor. So again, here's my 0 subnet. I can assign the gateway router.1, and then I can start assigning the computers .2, .3, .4, .5, and so forth. And all those devices would be on this subnet and have that as the gateway. All of these numbers would belong to the same subnet then. The next floor, 32 subnet, I would assign this 33, that first usable address, the gateway, and then I could assign the computers 34, 35, 36, 37. All of them belonging to this 32 subnet. The last one 64 subnet would be this guy right here. I would assign the gateway router 65, that first usable, and then the workstation could get 66, 67, 68, 69, and all belong to this 64 subnet. That is how you implement these subnets, and why, if I make this chart, I then have all these numbers at my fingertips to start assigning. Again, 32 subnet, 33 for the router, and then I might key into my DHCP server, start handing out 34, 35, 36, 37 to any device on this network. Okay, that's how I would implement subnets. And the book used a different example here of implementing one per maybe wing or building of a floor, that kind of thing. All right, and that's where we will come in to assign the plan for this site or this facility. That's how we implement our subnets. After we do some subnetting problems, we will implement our own. We will create our own subnetted map for our network and implement them on the routers and devices in our network.